Attention, people of Earth, I have an important announcement to make.
Oh, no!
Good morning,
Tony Caravan.
You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what you don't.
It's an excursion into the odd and into the very, very different.
I ain't one yet. This is insane.
Thank you, all you people live in the studio audience today. We actually missed a part of our opening, which was...
Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale.
Yeah, you'll hear a tale, that's for sure.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
People have gone downright bonkers out there right now. I mean, you know, bananas, as Dave Rubin says. I mean, it's nuts. I mean, just a glance here. Look at this. Probably not exactly the news that the average person saw. You got to get your news from the other side to find out the truth. Title of this show is Psyops Works So Well for the Ruling Elite. And I just put up a first chat. Everything you know is wrong. For those new to the webcast, broadcast, podcast, the morning vlog, as the girl said,
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
we do this almost every morning. Last year we did it 365 days in a row. Current time is 4:29 a.m. Eastern Time, Wednesday, the 26th of January in the calendar year 2022. And you may have seen this image here. The true marionettes are the media and politicians on my Getter page, which is also under the name ROCKFLUX, because that is the title that we go by for this show.
Quality, quantity, and variety.
ROCKFLUX.
Let's get this show on the road.
So, yes, you'll see that marionettes are the media and politicians often. But I wanted to just, touch on this. This isn't a news program. This is just an everything program. Flow of consciousness. This year I'm really trying to just examine where we are as a society, what's going on. I talk about Psyops in the title of this show, and it's like, do you see that? I mean, do you see how literally, out of control and ridiculous things have gotten?
This is a nightmare. It must be a nightmare.
I mean, what's going on? I mean, the media is obviously eating this stuff up, man. They got stories and they've got, archives of all kinds of news, photos of ships and troops and things. Like they do every time there's some kind of story like this, they dig these things out and they'll show an image that may be, from a previous, military exercise or some other event. Then they call it out. Oh, that wasn't really a current photo or a current video, but it's like when the news reports something in print, it's usually, appears somewhere way back. It's above the fold as a big headline when they first report it, and then when they, try to tell you that, it wasn't real, or, it was exaggerated, that appears somewhere in the back of the paper in small print, a little, retraction. It's crazy, and it's getting crazier. I've been saying this now for years, and, as people know, I've written so many books about it, and I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos. And, of course, I also do those beat poetry songs, which are basically, the lyrics are filled with talking about this kind of thing. And I just think it's crazy. But before we get into any of that stuff, since I have been touching a little bit on the news here, and we will touch on that, we might as well.
The Weather Watch forecast.
Might as well complete the scene and talk about the weather. This is a look ahead. This isn't etched in stone, but there appears to be, this is, issued by NOAA, and this was issued this morning. So, as of now, the models are looking like as if that by Friday we could be seeing snow, and in the Northeast particularly, and a little bit down into down New Mexico way. And the idea is that, if we want to just take that snow down New Mexico, Colorado area, that everything will be moving eastward. Now, this is from Friday, not today. There's no snow expected today necessarily in these spots, except up in the Great Lake area or higher elevation in the mountainous zones, where this time of year you're going to get snow mostly. Anyway, but I'm just bringing this out to just give you a heads up, as BP says. So it looks like, there's this weekend, you'll probably, South Texas, down the border way, rain is likely. Good chance of rain. And there's the possibility, and they still haven't confirmed that one, that we may be looking at some kind of blizzard conditions in the Northeast. Now, that wouldn't happen until Saturday, Sunday. So, the weekend hasn't been, this is a hard storm to forecast. And so what they're saying now, there's a chance of snow, a good chance of snow, all right, coming through the Ohio Valley, going back into St. Louis, Indiana, into Ohio, into western Pennsylvania, and, of course, up in Michigan, the Great Lakes area, and then along those Great Lakes in upstate New York, and like I said, as well, which will probably be down a little bit in northern New Mexico area. And then the following day, this storm should move eastward, and in the lower area, you'll probably see something happening in the panhandle of Texas, maybe south Oklahoma City. I saw one model that showed some stuff going on in western Kansas. I don't know what's going on there right now. And this storm, this big blob of blue that we see up in the northern region, Ohio Valley, moving towards, in the mid-Atlantic region, we could probably expect that to head into West Virginia and further into Pennsylvania and upstate New York, and staying in Ohio in that area. So, like I say, this is just kind of like just a heads up weather watch morning show thing saying, this weekend could turn out to be you could see a serious snow event in those areas. The rest of the country is just going to be basically cold, and it's cold out there just about everywhere.
The Weather Watch forecast.
And like I say, it's this may not happen. This is a prediction. These are predicted from models, the European model, the US model, and the Canadian model, and they try to put these things together. When I say they, I mean the people over at NOAA. And then it comes from our taxpayer dollars. And so, these meteorologists, this is what the storm centers are predicting. And I get this stuff from the same place as these weather channels on TV and the weathermen and all that stuff. So, they make it seem as if they do this stuff, but they don't really do it. You do it. You pay for, when you turn on the weather channel, half the stuff you see, when you see these maps and motions, that's, you paid for that. When you're watching a morning show on the network TV, you paid for that. That's coming from NOAA in most cases. Except for the guy who draws the little circle around things with their overpriced high-tech monitors. I'm pouring some coffee into my mug, if you're wondering what I'm doing. I just signed up for Getter, and I'll probably put a link to this on Getter after the show, unless it goes sideways, which some of my shows have been known to do that. I try to keep these things semi-light, I have, and when things get, a little out of control.
Really funny. Really funny.
We're not afraid to have a few laughs here, so that's par for the course. But basically, it's...
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
Yes. It's basically my morning vlog. All right, getting that out of the way, I just wanted to take one more look at some of this stuff. And this is no laughing matter, and that's for sure. But, this whole idea of Ukraine, which was once part of, and you notice up top it says Russia and former Soviet Union. Let me just put this in, just move that down a little bit. If you're watching this on TV, I notice some television apps, smart TVs, they'll cut off the end of YouTube. That's just the way it is. And this video is originating right now on YouTube. In the future, it may originate on Rumble. It may originate on Getter. It may originate on TonyCaravanLive.com locals. There's a number of places, but for right now, this is YouTube Studio, and that's where I'm originating this broadcast. In any event, from peacemaker to warmonger, tragic downfall of Ukraine's Zelensky, and Russia and former Soviet Union. There's still a lot of people in the U.S. that don't understand that the Soviet Union collapsed. And I know that sounds crazy, but we talk about it all the time. The dumbing down of America. Watch yesterday's show where I talk about that. Where we have, it's no mystery anymore that we're graduating functionally illiterate people. And that most of the problems that have contributed to the downfall of the U.S., to the way, the manner and way in which we live right now is because of that functional illiteracy. But, in this instance, which is live news taken from an overseas site, you can see protesters attempt to storm the Ukrainian parliament. Probably something you won't see here in the U.S. All right, shots fired in Ukrainian capital. All right, legislators call for a showdown with Russia at sea. That's pretty funny. And then CNN confuses Ukraine with Russia. Well, that's not surprising, wasn't it? Was it ABC or one of the other major news networks that thought that volcano in La Palma was actually happening in the country of Spain, not on an island off the coast of Africa? Remember that one? They didn't even know where it was, but they reported it. And again, when they try to cover themselves, they'll you never hear the retraction. Now, apparently, the U.S. and Europe, there's some kind of game being played with SWIFT, with a financial transactional network. Meanwhile, China and Russia stage joint military drills. Now, here's the part that the armchair generals don't really get. And the problem with having old men like Joe Biden and old generals sitting in the Pentagon. This is something out of, Dr. Strangelove. These guys live for war. And, of course, the military-industrial complex stands to make and already has made billions on this and will stand to make hundreds of billions as more and more materiel, troops, and weaponry and ammunition is positioned in key areas. And that's what this is. The bottom line is that's what this is really all about. Now, I personally have a theory that this is something to just throw up a smokescreen because we are on the verge. There's a book and there's a lot of information now coming to light that's hit the mainstream media on Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. And I think this is some sort of smokescreen to hide that information coming out to the public. But, that's just me. And that's just something I'm, saying. I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying it's possible. I'm saying it's within the realm of possibility. We see here NATO member will withdraw troops in event of war with Russia. Well, you can't have a war with Russia. Now, the reason you can't have a war with Russia, yes, they can have a proxy war, in other words, like the Vietnam War, which means we supply troops to the Ukraine and Russia would supply troops to the Ukraine. See, this is the part that nobody actually gets. That this is all one country that was part of the Soviet Union. These people were basically, in effect, Ukraine was Russia. All right? Number one. Number two, what's in question here is not the whole country of Russia, the way it's being played in in the Western press. The fact of the matter is there's a slither of Russians who live on the eastern side of Ukraine. Basically, as far as they're concerned, they're in Russia, they are Russians, etc. And all those people want is to be officially Russians. And Russia has been, and this has been going on now for, well over a couple of decades. Russia and those Russians are just saying, hey, we want to be Russian citizens because we're Russians. And that was the whole story behind the issue with Crimea that many people in the West didn't understand. And so I don't profess to be an expert on everything that's gone on over in Ukraine because it's been a big psyop by our intelligence agencies, our news media, and the people in government, the various marionettes of the media and politicians, right? And let's not forget that this whole thing is hypocrisy for profit, because the people claiming to have the moral standards or beliefs to which, they have the moral high ground, but their behavior doesn't conform. This is all pretense. All right? They're talking about a war. Russia's a nuclear power. The U.S. is a nuclear power. Russia technically has more nukes than we do. Okay? They're allied with China. Now China's a real threat. and you've probably heard the story about the possibility of China, while this Psyop is going on, would open a door for them to go and take over Taiwan. Now, Taiwan is where we really get a lot of our chips and a lot of key technology. All right, made in Taiwan is is basically something you see on a lot of the appliances and a lot of the key devices that you use. So that's where the attention should be. So isn't it a coincidence that the Biden family has also made a deal in the, double-digit millions with the Communist Chinese Party? And so again, I'm just throwing this possibility out there. I don't have, I'm not saying this is what it is, but could this Ukraine be a psyop in effect? It's all a diversion that's drawing us away from China. Because China is the country that's involved in actual murder, assassinations, has gulags, is selling human organs, right? Do people forget about how they took Hong Kong over and just forget, there's no freedom in Hong Kong anymore? And that the U.S. abandoned, the world abandoned Hong Kong, the UN abandoned Hong Kong. People forget about that. So I'm just throwing out some ideas here, just some stuff. This wasn't the main thing I wanted to get into. I know it's might be a little bit confusing, having the golden ratio up here. But something to think about. Take this thing to a different level. Does everything that's happening all make sense? Right? In other words, does it fit? Meanwhile, you have these two conflicting sides on this virus thing going on, right? In one instance, reports were coming out of the UK where they're basically easing all restrictions, forget it. It's over for practical purposes. And then you've got the US ratcheting up here, and then talk of some new thing in 49 countries or something, which is virtually impossible if you study the progression of this thing, unless they actually, like I said in previous things, literally there's somebody releasing this, right? Strategically releasing this man-made virus that came out of a lab, a weapons, bioweapons lab in China, communist China. I'm drinking coffee when I bend down like that. So that's why I use the word psyop. If it's dark here, again, it's 4:51 a.m. Eastern Time, my location. What do you have to really see? Right? So there's a lot of things going on right now. And none of them have anything to do with our lives. The quality of our life. Happiness. Because that's where we're taking these shows this year. The examination, right? Each show building upon another, adding to it, Try to organize my chair here. But the idea is that, well, why do we, what's this Ukraine thing all about? You know? Everything you know is wrong, or better put, you don't know what you don't know. So don't pretend there, say that you saw somebody on TV explaining Russia has put, 100,000 troops along the eastern border with Ukraine and is provoking this. You don't know anything. You only know what you hear talking heads on TV, people making, tens of millions of dollars selling commercials, right? The news is just the content in between the commercials. Those people are just marionettes. It's a puppet show. They're puppets for the politicians, right? This country is a corporatocracy. We know that. Big Pharma has been running it, making hundreds of billions of dollars the past 2 years. Big Tech has basically thrown the Constitution out the window and said, First Amendment, terms of service, we'll replace that with our terms of service. Fourth Amendment, the government's just pretend that doesn't exist. Right? Big Ag. According to the CDC, the average life expectancy went down 1.8 years, almost 2 years. And that has nothing to do with this virus thing. That's just in general here in the U.S. of A. Former United States, I call it. Western civilization collapsed, man. The Great Reset already happened back in 2020. And you realize that. You do realize that. A military-industrial complex now saying, hey, it's our turn. We need to rake in some more of those hundreds of billions of dollars now that the Afghan thing stopped and things aren't happening as in the Middle East the way we wanted to. How the heck are our stockholders going to get a return on their shares, their investment? We need to have ourselves a war. Wall Street's looking all for it. You see the stocks are repositioning themselves right now. There's been the VIX, which is a volatility index, has been up and down and up and down. It's up in the 30s right now. But basically the stock market dropped down, and then the plunge protection team, right? That's where the government came in and then just magically plopped it up. But the overseas markets didn't go up the same way at the same time, so it was clearly an effort put in by the White House, what they call the plunge protection team. They just prop up the market, the Fed. It's all fake, phony money anyway. It's not even printed anymore. It's just all digital. That's why the concept of cryptocurrency is kind of ridiculous, because we've been operating with crypto for a long time. The Fed has anyway. They're just it's all just ledgers, digital ledgers, digital money, digital currency, and, transferred to their banks. It's not backed by anything. It's not backed by gold. It's not backed by silver, right? They don't even bother printing the money anymore. It's not paper money. Fiat currency, they used to call it. No, it's cryptocurrency. It's just a different form of cryptocurrency. It's crypto because it's encrypted and it's digital. So it's, also meets the criteria for crypto. The only thing is it's not mined. They just create it whenever they feel like it. Why go through the trouble of mining it or have a set amount of it? Right? And when the central bankers, which is a consortium of banks in the U.S., the Fed is, and the central bankers around the world work in concert, well, they could do whatever they want to, right? A couple months ago, Bitcoin was up in the 60s, 60,000. Then it was what was it? 2 days ago, it was down to like 30 something. It literally lost. It was cut in half. That means if you had money in the bank, you went in the next day, half of your money was gone. Half of it. Forget about cryptocurrency, I'm telling you, man. And besides, the whole damn thing's digital. So all you need to do is have a little bit of a CME with we're overdue with, which I know a lot of people don't want to deal, or they think that's like some kind of woo-woo thing or something. But you know, a lot of magnetic things going on right now. Weakened magnetic field, the South Atlantic anomaly, right? Geographic South Poles actually left the continent of Antarctica. The geographic North Pole is heading towards Siberia. You know, we're heading towards a pole flip. These strange jet stream patterns and various... Look at the weather. The month of January is just about over, and it's coming up to be... I don't know what kind of crap they're going to try laying on you, but it's coming up to be one of the coldest Januaries, right, on record. And there's people still they're still talking about, you know, shutting down more access to organic carbon-based fuels, right? Think about that. How are we going to heat this country? Right? With windmills and solar? It's just not impossible. Do you understand what's going on here? So we have a virus that they should have just given us pills for 2 years ago. We've got a Ukrainian war, which is like they've just drawn out of thin air for the sake of either to mask. It's not even either or. It's probably either, and or. To mask, the scandals that the Biden family was involved in with the Ukrainians, and at the same time to give big media another story to cover if the virus does indeed wane to nothing, which it should be unless they actually physically start releasing more of these toxins that they created at the Wuhan lab. And lastly, for the military-industrial complex to, putting up their hands and, hey, it's our turn to make $200 billion on stuff. You big pharma guys just raked in your $1 trillion selling those things that didn't work for most people. And lying and hiding those antiviral things. I was talking again to somebody on the phone. I'm always talking to somebody about something. I'm like, when was the last time you heard the FDA or a White House spokesperson or a National Institute of Health, CDC person or somebody tell you something other than like social distance, wear a mask, and wash your hands? Like things like maybe eat a healthy diet. And here's the list of foods. The reason they won't tell you that's because of Big Ag and the people that produce all this processed food. Because processed food is basically taking off close to 2 years of our life expectancy. Could you imagine in the year 2022 that our life expectancy is actually dropped? Can you imagine that? I mean, if I would have told you that 20, 30, 40 years ago, you should see by the year 2022, people will be afraid of catching a cold that over 99% plus people didn't die from or wouldn't die from, which is the truth, That is the truth. They just frame it a different way. For regular viewers of this program, you've heard this before many times. There's 330 million people in the United States. So if 1 million people died from a particular thing, That would be 1/3 of 1% of the U.S. population. Okay? If it were a million. That would mean 99.6% of Americans did not die, and will not die. And that is a fact. Now, if I told you have a better chance of winning a rub-off ticket than getting this thing or dying from this thing. I mean, not getting it. I mean, it seems everybody gets it because they crank up those, what are they called, the PCR test or something. They could crank that up. Everybody's got that. Everybody's got coronavirus in their system because it's been around for so many years. Since 2002. Right? SARS-1, CoV-1. If anybody has a garage where they've got an old container of like Clorox wipes or a can of Lysol spray, something like that, and it's sitting somewhere in a corner of your workshop, garage, or something like that, go take a look at the back of it. And on the back of it, you'll see what it kills. And there's like a bullet list, like staphylococcus, these weird, germs, things you've probably heard of. You can't pronounce, none of us could pronounce them, but you know what, you see it and you've seen it before. Well, just keep looking at that bullet list of what this is something from like 20 years ago. And you'll see that one of the things that the Clorox wipe says on the back of it, this is like 20-year-old one. It says human coronavirus. Every time I tell somebody that or show that to somebody, they go, "Whoa, wow! I didn't know that. That can't be true." Yeah, it's true. Check it out, because I know there's a lot of people there that don't clean up their garage the way they should, or they've got old things on the shelf. Go look at some disinfectant wipes you may have laying around that just have been sitting on the shelf, and you never got around to throwing them out or something. And you read the back, and you see human coronavirus. We all have human coronavirus in us. You ever notice the words that that's another Psyops, that's another game they play. They'll call it COVID, they'll call it, the only time you have to watch what they say and how they say it. But we don't pay attention to it very, specifically. You have to you have to have your radar on. So if they're saying coronavirus, or if they're saying SARS-CoV-2, you see what I mean? You have to listen to them, right? These people are being admitted to the hospital. With, that's the other one. What did they die from or with? With coronavirus. And when you say COVID, what do you mean? Coronavirus? You see what I mean? What? Nobody asked those questions because the media is part of the corporatocracy, and they're just marionettes of the corporatocracy. They're part of that. Remember, everything on the media is just content to keep you tuned in for the commercial breaks so that those announcers could make $20 million salaries. Right? It's all a big game. You see the little girl there? The one in the black jumpsuit? That's you if you're a news junkie. So you're a marionette of a marionette. If you're not familiar with that term, you're a puppet of a puppet. That's what's going on. That's what's going on. This is all crazy game that's being played out. The leading cause of death in the United States is heart disease. Most of that's preventable and caused by a combination of big pharma and big ag. Right? Bad drugs and bad food. Same with diabetes. The second leading cause of death is cancer. Right? Between cancer and diabetes, 1.2 million people die every year in the United States. You don't see that on the corner of the TV screen of the mainstream media. You don't see them tallying that. In the last 10 years, 12 million people died of just heart disease and cancer alone. In the last 10 years, over 20-some million people died of various things that could have been prevented. Government didn't step in and have any press conferences and daily meetings and mandates, or sell you anything for any of that stuff. Did they now? You see what I mean? This is a dangerous game they're playing, right? This country has become a corporatocracy. That's why elections don't really matter all that much. Speaking of elections, what's Trump's problem with this idea? And don't, hear me out before you, think that this is a negative thing. What's the big deal about him trying to come up with an app? Why doesn't he just go on Getter? Right? Like, what's the problem? I mean, the last thing we need is now another social media platform. We have Rumble, which is better with free speech, and we have Getter, which is better with free speech. Right? You got Locals as a platform that creates money, but I understand Rumble even has come up with even another one mixed in with that. Getter might have some kind of thing set up with there where people could be monetized. So we don't need Twitter and YouTube and Facebook anymore. More people signed up for Getter in this month, in the first 3 weeks of January, broke a record for social media signups. So I don't know what's going on there, but I think it's time that some people who maybe have, to talk to some people in the Trump, camp and say, hey, man, let's not dilute the water, because that's the problem. Because there's still people that won't give up their Twitter. In other words, we can't dilute it. So how many apps can you, what I mean? How many things can you keep track of? Oh, I've got to respond to this person on YouTube. I've got to respond Twitter. I'm going to respond to these people on Twitter. I'm getting all these notifications. Now Getter on here, and I'm like Rumble. I'm getting these responses, and I still got Facebook. I got to deal with that, and there's Instagram, and right? You see what I mean? And so I'm starting to wonder about that. Is that another part of this whole plan? In other words, this whole thing is being, you don't water it down. You've got to hone it in. You've got to people have got to make a decision now. Right? So is Getter going to be the place? Getter and Rumble. In other words, Rumble going to replace YouTube? And is Getter going to be the new Twitter? People or a combination thereof, because they're more advanced platforms than the two former, right? And people have got to get their act together and figure that out. Because when you water something down like that, it becomes ineffective because you don't have that focus. Right? And you're going to miss a message, or you're not going to be able to respond to something. Most people have lives. So they don't have time to sit there for spend an 8-hour day just trying to keep up with social media. I mean, it's fine, I guess, if you're retired and bored silly. But even then, you got to go to the doctor's appointment. If you're that, You got to go to the restroom. You got to, sit down and have a meal, and you got to go grocery shopping, do some laundry, I got to take care of a leak in my roof. See what I'm saying? There's something fishy going on with that. And I think somebody needs, or people need to, not somebody, we all need to. And I'm the first guy to say it. Yeah, I don't think there should be a Trump app. And that's the last thing we need is another app. That's what Getter is. You see? Everybody's already moving over to it. Let's just do it. It's okay. You don't need to have your name. This idea of having the Trump brand. You know what I mean? Look, I'm all against anything that is for free speech and is against the crazies out there who are taking control of the world. The World Economic Forum, Klaus. And, and that guy they got pumped up with whatever in the White House now. But, let's not forget that, the last, under the Trump administration, the media went psycho and the politicians went psycho. And basically, they're just going to double down again. And let's not also forget this is a guy who is pushing the Trump brand name and who does have, a gold toilet seat. Okay? So somebody's got to speak to power, speak truth to power and say, hey, man, that's cool that you have that stuff and you live that life and more power to you, you do your thing. But, in this instance, don't dilute our freedom of speech. Don't dilute our means of expression. Don't dilute our community, the way we can speak and with one another and get the message out by just creating something because you want to have it stamped with your brand name on it. There's a lot of people afraid to say that kind of thing, and I hope it's resonating with you, and I hope more people say that because we need to speak to Trump and tell him, drop it. You don't need an app. Just go on Getter. All right? Or Rumble. I have no interest in Getter. I have no interest in Rumble. Or Locals. And a lot of people need to look at people like Tulsi Gabbard, too, who's come out against this Ukrainian war and start thinking about opening up this concept of forget about the left and right in a traditional sense, Republican, Democrat in a traditional sense, and start looking at people who have similar ways of viewing the world, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And not have everything drawn along party lines. I mean, there's so much I could say about all these things. And yeah, this conversation's been all over the place. Heck, we started with the weather, for crying out loud. Right? It's nuts. But, what can we do?
This is insane.
And I know some people hearing me say this are probably thinking,
Surprise, surprise, surprise.
But, it shouldn't come as a surprise to you. The idea is that if you want to be happy, you want to be free. First of all, freedom's a state of mind. So you can't rely on any individual ideology or political party, right, to provide you with freedom. Freedom is your God-given right. It's natural law. Freedom. It just exists. Freedom is a state of mind. You're either free or you're not free. All right? But the shackles, the worst shackles are the shackles of your mind, not physical shackles that can be, you take one of those things that you break the chains with to get, you see on those TV shows and movies. No. Freedom is a state of mind, and you have to know that you are free. And, look to someone else for your freedom. And happiness. Well, happiness is also a state of mind. And the question is, if you're unhappy, you have to find what is it that's making you unhappy. Now, just having some guy who barely knows he's alive, stumbling and bumbling around the White House shouldn't be the key to your happiness or unhappiness. And having some other person come in who the media are not going to, who are going to double and triple down on, and nothing's going to get done, right? That's not going to make you happier as a human being. No human is going to make you free, is going to make you happy. Right? Only you can do that. Happiness, comes from within. Freedom is a state of mind. And more people have to focus on that. And they have to be able to not be afraid to speak truth to power. And they have to accept the fact that this country has become a corporatocracy, and that the media and the politicians, all the Republicans, the Democrats, the Libertarians, okay, the Green Party, whomever, the Communist Socialists, the whole lot of them, they're all marionettes to the corporatocracy. What's the corporatocracy? Big tech, big pharma, big ag, military contractors, the Fed and Wall Street, okay, and big media and entertainment, which a big chunk of it's owned by the Communist Chinese. And, of course, big real estate, but that's kind of tied into Wall Street because that's that whole game they're playing there now. And so politicians, you say, well, what are you talking about? Politicians take campaign contributions from the corporatocracy. The media has commercials on it from the corporatocracy. So the media is not going to talk against the corporatocracy because they would lose their income and their salaries and their penthouses and their lifestyles and their children in those schools and that house in the cul-de-sac or the, gated community, doorman building. And the politicians, well, they don't want to lose, all of the above either, but they also want to get reelected, and they're not going to get reelected if they talk against big tech, big pharma, military contractors, big ag, Wall Street. Where do you think they get their campaign contributions? Their money comes from? Who do you think writes the bills? K Street, the lobbyist. Who's K Street? Who's the lobbyist? I lived and worked in Capitol Hill. The corporatocracy. All of the above that I just mentioned. All politicians are marionettes. They ultimately cave. There's amendments to practically every bill. Sometimes the entire bill is written by someone in the corporatocracy. We live in a corporatocracy. And it's not, it's not a constitutional republic anymore. That's still sitting there. Those documents exist, and it sits there. And I've already have a video, and I explained how you get rid of this and how we get back to a sense of it is still possible. All is not lost yet. I mean, it may appear to be in most parts of the country right now a Mad Max dystopian society. I mean, without a doubt. A lot of you are insulated because you're not living in, inner city Detroit, Chicago, parts of LA, New York, Philly, Atlanta, Austin, Houston, you name it, all these cities. This crazy violence is going on. Lawlessness, the great train robberies of, California going on like it's the 1800s, the wild, wild west. But the only way you change this around isn't through elections, isn't through one individual, isn't through the Trump app. The way you turn this around is, A, you have to commit to turning off cable and network news. And that includes Fox. Okay? Yes. Includes anything, left and right, whatever, in between. It means basically cutting the cord with cable. You have to cut the funding from them. And how you cut the funding is viewership. If you watch them on YouTube, guess what? They're getting views, they're getting funding. No, you have to basically choke off their revenue stream. That's how you topple big media. And there'll be people trying to prop them up for a little while. But eventually, the corporatocracy will realize, remember, they've got shareholders. They want quarter-over-quarter increases in their stock prices. All right? It's all about money. And so eventually they'll realize, well, putting a commercial on CNN is useless, so why do it? There's been some reports CNN lost 94% of their, or 92 or 94% of their viewers. Some shows only have 100,000 views. There's people on YouTube that have like millions of views. Joe Rogan gets more views than even Tucker and Hannity combined, and Rachel Maddow and all those people. Right? That's how you topple, big media, by just not watching them. And you topple the politicians by ignoring them, not by giving them campaign contributions. See, if you give a campaign contribution to a politician, I don't care what side, guess where that goes? The lion's share of that money goes to the media companies, commercials. Now, that commercial they make isn't going to change anybody's mind because people's minds have been made up for years ago. Am I going to change your mind so that you're going to vote for Kamala Harris because of a commercial? Of course not. Well, what makes you think somebody's going to vote for Trump or some other Republican because of a commercial? So why are you donating money, giving money to a candidate? That money's only going to go to a television commercial, maybe a billboard or a print ad, but it's the same deal. Nobody's going to change their ideology based, oh, wow, look at that billboard I saw while I was stuck in traffic. I think I'm going to vote for the other side now. You see? They got your mind all in a blender and you're so messed up that you're not thinking straight. It's real easy. The answer to this problem is real easy. There's a solution out there. Topple big media. And the only way you could topple big media is to cut the cord and have the intestinal fortitude to say, I am not going to watch Fox News. I'm not going to watch CNN. And I'm not going to watch Fox or CNN or MSNBC or whatever it might be, even on YouTube or Rumble. I'm not going to watch a clip. And if Dan Bongino or somebody else puts a clip from CNN to mock it, in his comments you put, Dan, great show, except I wish you wouldn't put clips promoting CNN or MSNBC on your show because you're just giving them views, because that's how the algorithms work. Every time that those stations are viewed, they get, it's like a click. So we need to just ignore them like you ignore the schoolyard bully. Somehow people just don't grab that. And they can't resist. It's like they're addicted. They're addicts. Right? It's like somebody who can't quit smoking or something. They get the patch, but then they're still smoking. It's like, come on. Snap out of it. Right? But that's who's holding us back. That's who's destroying this country. See, it's not Rachel Maddow, all right, that's destroying this country. It's not any of these fruitcakes in the White House that are destroying this country. Nancy Pelosi's not destroying this country. It's the people who are paying attention to Nancy Pelosi. It's the people that are watching Rachel Maddow. It's the people who are creating memes that have Rachel Maddow's face on and are trying to poke fun at her or showing a clip and then having a commentary after it that are destroying this country. Because you don't understand. You're giving them funding. By the way, those trucks going up, for someone new to this show, they're coal trucks going to coal-fired electric plants that are not too far from here. Something that the people at the UN IPCC and Greta and people like that don't understand. That in cold weather you need, electricity in the whole northern tier of the U.S. is produced by coal and fracked gas. And if you drive an electric car, you know what you're driving? You know what fuels it? Well, electric batteries, Elon Musk batteries. No. Those batteries are charged by coal and gas that's gotten from fracked gas. There's nothing more organic than oil. It comes from the ground. It's organic. CO2 is 0.004% of the atmosphere. I'll say this again because I say it all the time because a lot of people just aren't aware of this. We live on a nitrogen planet. 78% of our atmosphere is nitrogen. 21% oxygen, 0.9% is argon. That means 99.9% of the Earth's atmosphere is nitrogen, oxygen, and argon. 99%. Then there are some trace gases. Remember, 99% of the Earth's atmosphere is nitrogen, oxygen, and argon. And then there are some trace gases. Those trace gases are things like methane, water vapor, and CO2 and other stuff. Trace gases. Those trace gases are what give you food to eat. So if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, you should learn to love CO2 and hope that 0.004 CO2 maybe goes up to 0.005. It has nothing to do with the climate, nothing at all. Okay? It's a trace gas, but trees need it, plants need it, flowers need it, and crops need it. And they in turn give us oxygen that we breathe and food to eat. It's another thing that they just don't teach people. See, you got to understand the truth. The truth is in plain sight, but people just aren't aware of it. You want to topple media? It's simple. You do nothing. I had a show a couple of days ago. I tried to explain that. I said the answer, the solutions are not hard. In fact, they're easier than easy because the answer is to do nothing. In other words, but you just simply don't watch the media and they fall apart. So you do nothing. You don't watch them. Okay? Then they're done. They make their money by viewers because they're commercial entities. They sell commercials. Content, the news, as you call it, it's not news. this manufactured craziness that they're putting out there, these Psyops, is content to keep you tuned in during the commercials. But even if you watch them on YouTube or even Rumble or wherever you're watching them now, if somebody puts a clip on, gets through an algorithm because that's pulled from some original place, unless someone records it themselves and somehow make sure they pull out any kind of, code that's in there that goes back, right? That's how, like, YouTube knows if you play a song, you get a copyright hit because there's something embedded in that stuff that its algorithms can read. Remember, it's like The Matrix, the movie. You're not looking at me right now. I'm not a video. This isn't a video screen. This is all just a screen of code. This is being broken down, encoded, decoded, right? Encrypted, encrypted. It's just a jumble of code that's, reappearing on some device of yours, whether it's a smartphone, a smart TV, or a laptop, or a tablet, or a traditional desktop computer. But it's not a video terminal. That's not how it works. So you have to literally not watch these stations, these broadcasts, these people. So you do nothing and they disappear. That's how easy it is. You don't have to do something. And the same with campaign financing. You do nothing. You don't give them the money. And don't say, well, then the Democrats will outspend the Republicans, and so what? So what? Who pays attention to commercials? Who's influenced by commercials? It doesn't matter. You understand? You do nothing. If you have money to burn, give it to charity or give it to your kids or get yourself a new kitchen appliance or something. Better set of tires for your car. Don't be an idiot and support big media. And when the politicians tell you to do something, you just ignore them. Ignore them. Mostly it's easy to do because mostly they use the media as their tool. And so by ignoring the media and cutting the cord, you basically eliminate the politician's chance to communicate to you. So suddenly nobody knows who a person is. You see? Elections are meaningless. See, what people have to understand is we have to go through a period where we understand that the politicians in the media are marionettes or puppets. And so we have to ignore them, okay? Then those strings are basically cut. You got to cut the cord, cut the strings. And then they just flop down, and they're nothing. It's Pinocchio, okay? And they are like Pinocchio because they lie too. Their noses grow. And then once they're down for the count, okay, they're just chunks of wood with strings piled on top of them, okay? Then the Constitution, which is sitting there, suddenly becomes valid again. But this isn't going to happen in 2022 election or 2024. You understand, you're going about this the wrong way. This is the year to do nothing. I know this sounds crazy. You can't see it, but you've tried, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. There was a time when, just 5 years ago when Congress, basically the House, Senate, and the White House was all run by Republicans. And all it took was, a guy with dementia to come in and a pile of executive orders and a bunch of fruitcakes coming in with them to basically just erase everything there is and make things worse off than it was before. You understand? This back and forth thing has to end. And the only way that's going to end is we've got to topple their communications medium. You see? The system has to be purged before it can rise. The phoenix cannot rise from the ashes until it is purged. And the number one threat to this country is and always has been the media. And the media has to be totally eliminated. And the only way that can happen is that if you cut the cord. You keep your internet connection. Use the Getter, use the Rumble, things like that. But don't repost anything that has to do with any kind of media. Because those are the voices of the politicians. And don't donate to any political campaign. Because then you fund the media. That's what political campaign contributions go to. And don't say, well, no, it sports a jumbotron at a rally. We don't need those rallies anymore. We got to get off of this stuff. Do you understand? All right? We don't need a new separate Trump-branded app. All right? The status quo, what worked in the past, got us here. We need a paradigm shift. And the paradigm shift is basically easy to do. It means you have to do nothing. And you say, well, what do I do? Well, there's plenty to do. Get back to living life. Freedom is a state of mind. Be free, live free. All right? But I live in a totalitarian state of New York. Then get the heck out of there. I found a place. I'm living on the outskirts of a town right now where my taxes, mortgage, and insurance are $200 a month. And look what I got in my backyard. That's a garden. I grow every possible thing you can. $200 a month, taxes, mortgage, insurance includes that yard and that detached garage. I have a workshop in my grow room. You can do it. It's easy. You can do it. You can live cheap, live free, and by doing nothing. You got to topple the media. The only way to topple the media is you got to cut the cord. In the case of this, is the cord is like those is the strings propping them up. The corporatocracy is propping them up. But you are part of the corporatocracy because you're feeding that behemoth. You're doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Don't pay attention to this Ukrainian nonsense. Be on the right side. Don't be some kind of warmonger. Right? We got to get there, darn there, Ruskies. Soviet Union doesn't exist, hasn't existed for 30 years. Come on. It's over. That's an in-house issue over there. All right? Forget about it. You want to talk about it, talk about that on Rumble and Getter and stuff. That's okay. Just don't quote CNN or Fox or MSNBC or anything to do with any kind of media. In other words, people need to pretend that the media no longer exists, and they will go away. You need to ghost them. You need to basically do what they did to people on Twitter, right? You have to make them a non-entity. You have to basically ban them. It's time the people ban media. People need to ban Twitter. Don't be banned on Twitter. We need to ban Twitter. How do you ban Twitter? You just don't pay attention to it. You could keep an account there if you want to. if you're afraid, right? It's like the person who quits smoking keeps one in the upper drawer in a emergency cigarette in a pack somewhere in her underwear drawer. Yeah, okay, keep Twitter. That's your emergency cigarette in your underwear drawer, right? Case of emergency. But just don't tweet anymore. Goes away. Maybe someday they'll come to their senses then. Remember, they are corporations. See, the corporations run on what? Money. Even the Federal Reserve itself is a consortium of banks around the U.S. They need money. Okay? Politics, it's follow the money. Ultimately, money is in charge. People don't get that. You have the power. They don't have the power. And I don't understand why people don't see that. I mean, are you so indoctrinated, conditioned, and propagandized that you don't see that? You have the power. That freedom is a state of mind. Freedom is natural law. Freedom is a God-given right. All right? Freedom is yours. You are free. And you have the right to be happy. And happiness comes from within. And you can make yourself happy. And no man or woman is going to make you happy. I mean, that's qualified indifference as far as someone in love and getting married or, your children. Yes, you can find happiness that way. But I'm talking about no outside person, some politician, all right, is not going to make you happy. Happiness is something inside of you. So your goal should be life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that is something that you are in charge of, not the media, not the politicians. And the way to topple this totalitarian authoritarianism, communist, Stasi state, whatever you want to call it, is easy. You do nothing. By nothing, I mean you cut the cord. And when you cut the cord to the media, you cut the strings to the marionettes, the puppets. Okay? They fall on the floor. It's over. And after it's all over, remember, then the constitutional republic, because it's there, the Constitution document still exists. It's there under glass. All right? And then the phoenix rises from the ashes. So don't do what has failed over the past couple of decades and certainly over the past 5 years. That's insanity. It's the definition of insanity. Do nothing, and you will change things for the better. You will be happier. You will be free, and the constitutional republic will rise again. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. I mean, everything else is hypocrisy for profit. You have to understand that. On both sides of the aisle, it's hypocrisy for profit. Okay. Do you get it? Yeah, we still got snow here. And it's going to be cold. So keep that in mind this weekend, by the way. So anyway, for those new to this show, thanks for tuning in.
Good morning.
I have a website, TonyCaravanLive.com, ROCKFLUX.com. I've written like 10 books. There's my latest 2 books. Then What is the latest. Codex was one previous to that. I have a site, Great Solar Stuff too, which has stuff that can help you if there's a power failure. And if you can see the girl who has the shirt, Game Over, I have shirts, hoodies, all kinds of stuff, mugs with the ROCKFLUX logo, but also with stuff that say like you don't know what you don't know, or everything you know is wrong, or the classic Tony Caravan logo, iconic image. Get some of that stuff. Visit my website. There's links to everything there. And by doing that, that lets me know that you support this site the best way. I appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in again.